It started with removing 2 sections of Genoa tracks, mounted on both sides of the boat through the bulwarks with 70 8 to 9 inch long bolts.
We got 70 holes going directly from the outside of the boat into the inside of the boat, and we're going to eliminate those 70 bolts. What a horrible bit of gear, straight to the bin.
And why were we doing this?
We're at the point now where it's counterproductive to keep carrying on down below without fixing this one last major leak.
You can see these rust stains coming down the hull, and that's how many bolts are leaking. Virtually all of them.
But this is where things started to get really interesting.
Any other areas where I suspect there may be some rotted plywood core, we'll have to take a section of cap rail off and we'll have a look, and we'll see what we find. This teak is not looking very healthy under there at all. Now this could be a major source of a leak here. Here we go. I can already see some cracks and some screw holes with corrosion around them. Not good. These screws are the source of leaks down the bulwarks and into the inside of the hull. So I'm removing them all. Another one gone. And I'll just run you through the myriad of problems with water getting in underneath this cap rail and into the inside of the boat. You can see cracks here. Water would have been going straight through here, straight down into that aft cabin. Any water that gets in here, and water has been getting in because we can see the corrosion around the screws. A lot of the screws just pulled out. So rainwater, seawater just goes straight down. Here it's actually getting worse. It's very badly cracked. There's multiple cracks. There's a crack here, crack there, more holes. There's another crack forms along here. There's a crack runs all the way along here. There's a crack there. There's more cracks. Cracking, cracking, cracking. So there's no choice but to dig this filler out and reform this join. We'll clean the whole lot up and backfill it, and that's going to be done all the way around the boat. There's no other way.
And just when we thought it couldn't get worse, the job got even bigger.
Of course the fair leads will have to come out and make sure they're sealed around there. The cleats will have to come off. Boats, it's always a bigger job than it looks. It sounds very hollow in there. I'm expecting to find some rotten timbers or timbers that aren't actually there anymore. Oh dear, oh dear. Oh my god. Wait till you see this. Oh man. When you have a look at this, you'll see why the aft cabin is more like a swimming pool. And as we suspected, it's cracked. There's a crack which just gets worse and worse. Lots of holes and worse. And this is pretty bad. It's no wonder we got a wet bed. There's the rotten wood. This is the filler they use in the top, 1/2 inch deep. Nothing. Supposed to be timber in there, and sure enough all that's in there is, well, it looks like soil really. Yes, potting mix, that's the word I'm looking for. You make good potting mix. All that's in here used to be wood, has now just turned to mulch basically. So the solution to fix this has been to take all the timber out, and I'm going to backfill the inside of this with reinforced epoxy resin. It's going to be reinforced with microfiber, and that's going to rejoin the hull and deck, and hopefully should eliminate all of our leaks. Cross fingers. It's actually going to be joined now, whereas before it was not joined at all. It's amazing the boat had really held together properly.
This is Brilliant 2, a Kelly Peterson 44 built in 1978. This is us, the Smallwoods. And this is the story of our long overdue boat refit. Welcome along for the ride. Well, good morning and welcome to our newly refurbished scupper area. It's not completely finished yet,
As you can see, we're still missing the teak toe rail. But before that goes back on, we wanted to show you what the final repair looks like on our hull to deck join. This is the epoxy and microfiber filler. You would have seen Julian pouring into this gap if you watched our last video. It's now been sanded flush with the top of the bulwark, and there are holes drilled in it for the teak toe rail to be reattached to. The beauty of this now is that those holes don't penetrate into wood anymore. So if we're ever unfortunate enough to have water getting in here again, it can't affect any of the integral core or make its way into the interior of the boat. So of course what you can also see here is a repaired and repainted scupper area. Once we'd gone to all that effort of fixing the hull to deck join, around 30 metres or 100 feet of perimeter, we couldn't just throw a damaged timber rail back onto an equally damaged surface that was still here at that point. To give you a reminder of what it was like, because we still have plenty of reminders around the boat, here's a section of deck that hasn't been repaired. You can see where the gel coat has chipped away and there's exposed fiberglass, and of course it just looks pretty grotty. Now going from this to this, well, it wasn't exactly a small task, and it wasn't just cosmetic. There was unwanted deck gear to get rid of and water damage to repair around some of the many deck fittings we did need to keep, like stanchion bases and essential rigging attachment points. So come back in time with us and we'll show you how the job unfolded. And as always, we hope you enjoy the show.
Another bright and sunny Monday morning. It's blowing like anything out there. The boat keeps heeling over as if we're sailing along, which is nice. And today I'm going to get on with removing some unwanted deck gear and filling the holes in. Down here in the aft cabin locker on the starboard side, and I've already loosened them off a while back. These are 4 bolts that hold the pad eye down to the deck that used to be for the running backstay turning block. We don't need that anymore. We've moved that to a chain plate. So I'm going to get this off and go up top and take the old fitting off. I'll just remove the nuts from under this. Hopefully it should come up. Nothing's ever easy on an old boat, or a new boat. Okay, tool number 3 coming up. Oh, ow. Right, first cut for the day. This is a bit of a surprise. These bolts go right through the plywood deck, and I was fully expecting these to come out corroded through having been surrounded with moisture for years, decades. But as you can see, they're all very clean. And so a couple of things. I don't think this fitting and these bolt holes were leaking. But more importantly, I don't think that the plywood in the section of deck that this goes through was saturated or damp, otherwise they would be corroded. So that's a good sign. It could lead to the conclusion that all of the leaking was taking place through the dreaded Genoa track bolts. Anyway, I'm going to core those areas out and fill them with epoxy, so we don't need this anymore. So I'm just clearing these holes out. I'm going to drill them slightly bigger than they were before. So the bolt was 8mm or whatever that is, an imperial bolt. This is a 9mm. I just want to see if there's any damp wood in there. I want to get rid of it before I epoxy this up. Yeah, this is dry plywood, surprisingly. Yeah, nice.
Finding an intact core in this part of the deck meant an easy job filling these unwanted holes with the same epoxy and microfiber mix we'd used on the hull to deck join. Of course, it wasn't going to be this straightforward in other parts of the boat,
as we were soon to discover.
Hello and welcome. Today I'm in the aft cabin and it's removal of the port side stanchions day. I'm going to get all the nuts off that I can down here, and when I've removed everything I can, I'm going to go and get Shaz and she's going to help me remove the rest of it. So here we go. Actually, it's this tool that I will be using mostly. Now I've just discovered something quite interesting as far as where the water is coming in. So this is over on the port side, port quarter, and this is where we had most trouble right up until the last rain. It was still wet down here, that's why I've got the fan going to try and dry all this out. So at the moment I'm pulling all the stanchion nuts off of the bolts up here. We're going to remove all the stanchions today. What I've also got to remove are these bolts. So these bolts here are the 3/8 inch retaining bolts for the davits, and we've got the forward set here and the aft set in here. This is right in the corner of where the transom joins the side of the hull. So these all look good, there's no corrosion on these or anything like that. There's no dampness up here in the foam. But when we go over to here, this headliner right next to these bolts here is soaking wet, and this headliner is directly above where this wood is drying out here and where the mattress was getting wet, and the bolts are corroded and there's water on them. So I haven't pulled these out yet, but there's no sealant on these threads. If you go across to these threads where they put these in, they're actually white with sealant, and there's no dampness here, and there's no corrosion on the bolts. Yeah, I was a bit confused because the actual hull to deck join above here has been sealed for a couple of weeks now, and this is all still wet. Anyway, when I pull these out, I'll see if there's actually any sealant on them, but I might have to have a word with certain people that installed this. It's too late now. Anyway, we can fix it.
This first stage in removing all the stanchion bases and various deck fittings around the perimeter of the boat meant systematically locating each one that could be accessed from below deck and removing nuts from bolts. Some of the locations Julian had to get into meant adopting poses worthy of a yoga routine, and, as usual, some of his boat work hacks were ingenious.
We're just pulling the old bolts out of the stanchions at the back of the boat. You might be able to pull that out. Just look at that. That's just a little bit corroded.
Just a little bit.
You see how it's shiny? That's active corrosion. That's actively corroding away in its moist environment. It's soaking wet. Look at that. This one next to it.
Well, that's not as bad.
Not on top.
Nearly as bad.
No, not corroded at all. Right next to it. These are old bolts too because they're slotted head. That one's alright. Not funny.
Just that one.
Just the one, so it's the one that's acting as the anode to the stanchion.
Look at the state of that.
Good morning. It's a beautiful Sunday morning down here on the marina, and today I've had to take the backstay off. Luckily this boat has running backstays, so we've got the mast supported with a running backstay, but I've also put a ratchet strap down here to take the strain as well. fixed the ratchet strap to the steering gear back here. I've removed all of the bolts. There's 5 of those which actually go through the transom down here. Pulled all of them out, and I'm about to pull this up. Should come up fairly easy. Well, I don't know how easy it'll come out. Anyway, we shall see. The bolts, I did these about 13 years ago, 14 years ago I think. They're probably going to get used again. A couple of them were wet. When you have a look at what I've just pulled out from around the chain plate, I'd say water's definitely been getting through there. Anyway, well, that came up a bit easier than I thought it would. Well, I can't remember if we replaced this or not. I think we did, in which case it'll probably clean up. I can't tell if there's any crevice corrosion or anything until I polish it up. Anyway, I don't need to do that now. I just need to get all this cleaned up.
The next stage of this process was attacking the deck surface. I'll explain later why we didn't do the whole deck, but as you can see from the areas Julian's masking, we were just concentrating on the scuppers and bulwark and any adjacent areas where the damage was so bad it warranted at least a temporary patch. After chiselling off all the chipped gel coat, the next task was to mix and apply a 2-part epoxy fairing paste called Technifil XP. Incidentally, we did this whole job in sections, working on the port and starboard aft quarters separately, and then the front half of the boat. This was primarily because we were still using the boat, and although we were dock bound when things like stanchions or the backstay had to be taken off, doing these jobs in smaller chunks kept those periods mercifully short. On the flip side, there were more of them, and the whole job took longer. Anyway, it also explains why you might have already noticed some of this Smurf blue bog in a couple of our earlier video clips. That bog then had to be sanded and the whole area prepared for paint, which in itself would be a 3-step process, as you're about to see.
So what's going on today, babe? We're just getting ready to paint the scuppers. They've all been filled with epoxy filler, sanded to 120 grit.
I'll just wipe them down with a cloth and a bit of methylated or white spirit, methylated spirit.
It's only high build, going to be sanded anyway.
Same sort of process that we did with the cockpit, isn't it? We're using the same materials pretty much, so it should be easy. Famous last words.
Artist at work.
Well, how about that? Two more to go. High build. Oh.
All 3.
Well, 3 coats of high build in total, 2 coats of primer, and it'll be 2 or 3 coats of top coat. It's an endless process.
Much later.
Here we are, it's a beautiful day, and first top coat's going on.
Yay, finally.
It's looking very white.
But this is the tricky coat, because this is the one that we've got to roll and tip. It's just not an easy surface to work with all these little stanchion bases. And anyway, it is what it is. The famous saying,
words
that people love to hate.
The tipping of the brush takes the little air bubbles out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not my best work,
Better
but
than I could do.
it will do.
Much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
Good morning. Well, today we can start putting bits back on. So here's the freshly painted white scupper. I've already dry fitted these are my chain plates. So now I'm going to put them on permanently.
If you've watched our previous videos, you will have already seen the chain plates going on, but there were of course a lot of other fittings to reinstall too.
And that's done. Cleats are done, fair leads done, chain plates are done. So today's the day I am dry fitting the stanchion bases. First thing I'm going to do is get inside the boat and drill from inside out, just a small hole which will show me where some of the bolts come through. I won't be able to get to all of them, but I do have a couple of different tools I can use to do that if I have to. Anyway, here we go. We're going to go into the aft cabin and start down there. This gooey stuff is butyl tape that I used to plug up the holes whilst all this work was going on. So what I'm doing here is marking where the holes are. I can't see them. There's a few layers of filler on there, but not much, so there's going to be a little soft spot there. It's 50mm between these centres, 2 inches, actually 55 there. So I've got a hole here which I drilled up from underneath, and I'll just put my ruler, my worn out ruler, at 55, and there should be a hole here somewhere. I'll clear the holes that I do know, and then I'll come to dry fit the stanchion base. I'll position it here with the bolts in, and then I'll know where the other two are going to be. The filler in these holes is a bit thicker than in other places. Anyway, I've got these two, so that's my guide for those. Now coming back here, this is the davit base, and that's going to be up here in the corner, and that's the aft bolt hole. The other one's going to be down here somewhere. So I found one of the bolt holes there. Stanchion over here. It's about 2 1/4. Some other holes should be about here. There we go. Here's the other one. 2 1/4. Just under. Should be about here. Here we go. That's how it's supposed to work. It doesn't always go to plan. There you go, so I can drill those out now. Let's drill a clearance hole first. Here comes the butyl tape that I sealed the holes with. This is sticky stuff. We're not going to seal our stanchion bases with it. We're going to use a urethane, I think it's urethane. It's a flexible roofing sealant. Good enough for roofing, good enough for us. Now I'm drilling the right size hole for the bolt, basically just opening it back out again, what was already there. This should go in, yep. Just gives an extra bit of sealant around the bolt when you do this. That's it, that one's ready. Right, I've almost got this slid into position. I've used these old placemats that Shaz threw out the other day. Perfect for this job, stop any scratching going on. I'm going to get these into position over where they go, and then slide the mats out the way and push the bolts in, and I'm sure everything fits. I'm just going to lift each base up, tape around it, and then it'll sit there until we're ready to put sealant on. Good morning. Today is bolt the stanchions down.
Bolt your stanchions down day.
So it's a bit exciting.
Yay!
we'll fill you in on the detail of what we're doing as we do it. At the moment we're just getting ready to start getting all our kit together and get into it. Right, at the moment we've got the rails supported by the halyard here. We're going to put these two down first, and once these are bolted on we can take the halyard off and we know that nothing else is going to fall off. So what we're going to do here is Shaz is going to be up top guiding these in. We're going to get sealant out. We're going to put sealant around the top of each bolt, just at the top. I don't want sealant all the way down. And we're going to put sealant on the base here. We'll have to do that to these two at one time in this case. It is the most difficult bit of the whole thing, so we thought we'd do it first. Why not? And then we're going to lower these down, and you'll see we're going to put little spacers in the corners there too.
Otherwise known as rivets.
As rivets, like 3mm in, just like that on the corners. Because these bow up a bit in the middle, and that'll give us our spacing when we tighten them down. Right, here we go. A bit way too much, but it's better to have too much than not enough.
Okie dokie. Right, I've managed to get silicone absolutely everywhere already. So the reason we're putting these little spacers, otherwise known as rivets, in is as everything gets bolted down, it would just squish all the silicone out, which is not what we want. We actually want a pad of silicone there. So this is going to allow that silicone to stay.
Right, now I should be able to go and tighten this down. We had a sequence before, didn't we?
Clockwise, starting
Clockwise
from the
outside.
Yeah.
So outside, forward, forward.
Yeah. So.
Actually, you can turn yours, babe.
I can turn them.
Turn it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got the very complicated job of being up here with the screwdriver. It's all right. I'm just talking to the camera. Get more sense out of it than talking to Julian. No, that's not true really. Okay, you putting the nut on? So I'm going to turn the screw. Okay.
Number one.
Okay, next one.
Number two. Number three. Number four. That's it. Right, number one down. Let's get that other one down before the sealant goes off.
So this is how we rebedded the whole of the aft rail, one stanchion at a time. Once the silicone had set, we could tighten the bolts to their full extent, cutting away any excess and removing all the masking tape. The backstay was of course reinstalled and rebedded too. You might have noticed that we didn't actually lift the stanchions in the forward half of the boat. This was because we'd already done that earlier in the refit when we were leak-proofing the saloon. However, we hadn't previously touched any of the forward deck fittings, like mooring cleats, fair leads, spinnaker pole attachments, or fuel and water tank filler caps. So all of these were now re-drilled, remounted and resealed like everything else. And so ended another stage of the mammoth job we'd never expected to do, but which we were now looking forward to reaping the rewards from below deck. Painstaking though it was, if all this work was going to mean a dry boat, well then, it absolutely had to be worth it.
Well, if you've made it through to this part of the video, thank you for sharing our pain. If you own a boat, we hope you've learned a thing or two so that if or when you're faced with any of these sorts of tasks yourself, they might be a bit easier for you. I did promise earlier to explain why we hadn't painted the whole deck. It obviously all needs doing, but given the fact that none of this work was on our original to-do list, we had to draw the line somewhere, so that is what we did, literally. Boat work kind of reminds me of that song kids used to sing when they were learning about the human skeleton, about how the hip bone's connected to the leg bone and the leg bone's connected to some other bone.
The hip bone connected to the ankle bone, the ankle bone connected to the leg bone, the leg bone connected to the knee bone.
You get the picture? Well, that's boats for you. Where do you stop? For us, that line in this case was the non-skid mark, and the idea is that we'll continue repairing and repainting all of this deck at some stage in the future, but not now. For now, we need to finish this particular job and get back to everything we'd put on hold down below deck. So on that note, and as I think I said at the beginning of this video, this of course isn't quite finished yet. We still do have one thing left to do, and it's a big thing, of course, and that is repair and reinstall the timber tow rail. So if you want to see some master craftsmanship, Julian's, not mine, then stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.